Hello, I'm Manoj Jana, founder and CEO of BioFolk Scientific Community. Uh, I'm joined by Dr. Sudip Das, our chairperson of BioFolk Scientific Community, mastermind of this BioFolk, and he's a staff scientist from Technical University of Munich, joined from Germany. We are honored to welcome Dr. Leonor, our today guest speaker. She's a junior, she's a senior program officer at EMBO from Germany. Can you briefly introduce yourself? Can you briefly
Mhm.
introduce yourself uh, and describe your global program which you are currently manage?
Okay. So hi, I'm Leo. I'm a senior program officer at EMBO, the European Molecular Biology Organization. So I am originally trained in biochemistry, and I did my PhD in neuroscience. And I'm currently working in the Global Activities Office at EMBO, and we are responsible for handling, the cooperation agreements with countries outside of Europe, and running the EMBO programs for the research communities in these countries. Yeah, super happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, means we have studied your background. You are working in so long as a neuroscience bench. What motivated you to turn your career as a neuroscience to as a EMBO global leader?
Yeah, so well, the shift was informed by both like my personal background and also kind of my personality and what I value in my work. Um, so I grew up and I studied outside of Europe. So I always had this perspective that it's really important to have kind of fair and equal representation, whether it's in science or in other kind of fields in life. So when I was, working on my PhD project, I really enjoyed it, but I was kind of missing the cooperative side of things. And I think in academia, we do work as theoretically a cooperative community, but it's very competitive, which is fine. I mean, healthy competition is a good thing, but I was kind of missing the people aspect and also the kind of, being able to contribute to projects or to policies that had an impact beyond just myself and my experiments. So yeah, after my PhD, I started looking for jobs that had more, these components that I valued in my work. And one thing, leads to another, and I started working in international cooperation. So yeah.
Great.
Dr. Das,
Thank you very much for joining. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining. I think I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Sudip. I'm working as a staff scientist, Technical University of Munich, and in BioFolk, it's a community of academics and also people who are generally interested in biotechnology and biology, because most of us are biologists. And it's associated with a nonprofit which Manoj started, and he is also one of the people who's responsible for this idea. And he actively works in the field. And for our focus, we generally want students from all aspects of life, all levels of education, who are interested in biology and also global science, to come together and to get knowledge from every possible source. I mean, be manage bodies and so on and henceforth. So I think this is a very, very important that someone like you, who is in such a esteemed organization and with a positive career path, to come and show that it's not only about being a scientist in the lab, rather a much more greater area of work. Motivate people to get more knowledge and skills. Bit about myself. I'm a staff scientist here in Technical University of Munich. Actually, I was one of the people who thought, hey, let's bring in people from who are doing jobs which generally we would not think about, right? I mean, since I think you already know, Leonor, that it's like staff scientist is like scientist and a staff person at the same time. So I manage research, I do research.
Yeah.
So this is something which I did also for the first time after my postdoc. So for me, I really appreciate this part of like life science career. You know, this is something which I'm pretty sure, and I can tell you that a lot of people from our audience from India do not really think about that. Hey, this is also a career option. So,
you know, sure, yeah.
So this is something which really I want to focus on and bring, which will make us a little different from any other platform in this sense. So I think this is our motivation, and specifically, I'm really grateful that you agreed to join, because this is, I think, one of the best we can get, and not only because you have this alternative path, because you are associated with EMBO, which is one of the most respected organizations in the world when it comes to science. So I think this is a great opportunity. I'm grateful. And I think Manoj, I don't know if Manoj knows it or not, but I think me and Leo have quite a lot of similarity, actually, because I saw your profile and I was really pleasantly surprised that you were in EPFL at the same time I was there in 2017.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah. So you were in EPFL, but I was in UNIL, so right opposite, right, in the same campus.
Yeah.
So beautiful campus, by the way, and I really
want to. I
think Leo will agree, and I think some of our audience, whoever wants to pursue anything in that campus, I would say go for it, because that is one of the most beautiful campuses, right beside Lake Geneva. And I really enjoyed my time there. So I was there from 2017 to 2022 in UNIL. This is one common thing is that you were in Bristol. I actually went for a seminar in Bristol. I really like the city.
It's great. Bristol's wonderful.
It's really great. Yeah, it's really a nice city. So that's one of the commonalities we have. And right now you are sitting in Heidelberg campus, if I'm not wrong.
I am, yeah.
Yeah. And so my very good friend is there in the core facility, microscopic core facility.
Look at that.
Yes. So she's one of the research associates there right now.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah,
and I love that campus.
Connect with them, actually.
Yeah. I love that campus. It's really amazing.
Really nice here.
Yeah. So anybody listening in the audience, if you want to visit the EMBL Heidelberg campus, I will absolutely recommend that. And I still cannot forget the food they make there. It is really tasty.
Yeah, I mean, for a canteen is excellent. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So this is, I just wanted this to be highlighted, because it sort of brings us together as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think what I want to start with is that pivotal moment where you thought, okay, were you always looking for this? At what point in your career or is just dependent on the opportunity you got, or at what point was the pivotal point in this case?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So when I was doing my PhD, I really liked it, but I didn't really feel like super fulfilled. And I mean, I think, we work can mean different things in people's lives. Like it can be the way we pay the bills, and that's absolutely valid. It can be the way we pay the bills and that we have a great time during the day. And it can be, it can be like a life purpose. It doesn't have to be, right? So sometimes you have these different components overlapping. I really enjoy working, and I need my job to be fulfilling from like an intellectual perspective, but also from like a principles perspective, right? I think I would struggle very much to be in a job where, my kind of life principles don't align with what I'm doing every day during the day. And so what was happening was that, I was doing research, but I didn't really feel like, generally speaking, I know there are oases that are different within academia, but generally speaking, I didn't feel that academia functions in a way that is aligned with my values.
Okay. Yeah.
So I thought, I love research. I love teaching. I love, kind of supporting people and all of these things. So I think one thing led to another, and I just started looking for jobs that made more sense for the kind of person I am and what I wanted to achieve. So actually, after my PhD and a fairly long transition period of like, getting training in project management and spending a lot of time looking for jobs and working in a cafe to pay the bills and all of these things, I came across this job at EPFL. And it had this component of teaching because I was working in their Center for Digital Education, and I was, working with them to develop a neuroscience massive online course. And he also had this component of, okay, it's open, anyone can take the course, anyone in the world. So you're making knowledge, freely available to anyone who's interested in it. And it gave me the freedom, that specific project, to invite kind of anyone I wanted. And for me, this was important because I thought, okay, if we're going to have great lecturers in this course, I really want to make sure we have people from across the world and not just Europe.
Yeah.
So that was like, the first kind of pivotal moment that I thought, well, I need to be looking for things that allow me to kind of implement the sort of strategies that I think are important in science and in education. So that was really the first thing. And for me, it kind of came with a lot of thinking about what's important for me as a person. And of course, like, jobs come up and we take jobs that come up, and sometimes that's that. But I think it's important to reflect on what's important for us as people and professionals. And I think kind of reaching that realization was the most pivotal moment. And then eventually finding the jobs. And then one thing leads to another. And I just kind of kept finding jobs that had more and more of an international cooperation component because that's what I was looking for. So.
Yeah, that's cool. We will come to that international aspect actually later in when we're discussing. I want to know. I'm sure that pretty much all our audience will think, what is your day-to-day job look like? What do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, it varies a lot. So I mean, you commented that earlier that there's a lot of different career paths, and I always like to say, especially to people doing their PhDs and stuff, that we cannot look at science as people working in the lab only. Because if you think about it, for anything to come into the lab, reagents, equipment, even ourselves as people, we need to have teams of other people who are managing that. You need to have human resources, you need to have procurement, you need to have logistics, you need to have, so there's, vast amounts of people who are making science work, right? So you have all of this going on in the background, and then we and the reagents and the equipment come into the lab, we make the science happen. But then you need to publish that research, you need to communicate that research, you need to get the money for the research, right? So you have teams of people in publishing, in funding agencies like I am right now, you name it, like grants offices. So if people, in terms of like careers in science, being in the lab is actually a tiny, tiny fraction of academia. Of course, it's an important one because without data, we can't kind of keep going. But also, without all these other jobs and roles, academia cannot exist. If you start taking all these pieces of the puzzle, it's just going to fall apart. So my day-to-day job, how does it look like? It depends on the day. So I have a layer of kind of more diplomacy, let's call it like that, where I interact with people who are in the ministries with whom we have cooperation agreements. So so we have our points of contact. So there's that part, and there's also the part of like organizing diplomatic visits to the countries and thinking about, what are the topics we want to focus on, what are the things that need to be addressed. Then there's the part of, okay, we do have our partner countries and that is managed. But we also have our funding programs, right? So we need to advertise the funding programs. We need to process all the selection, we incoming applications, the interviews, all of that. So I also work on that together with colleagues. So that part has a little bit more of an admin side kind of thing. Then there's the component of thinking, okay, in terms of organizing events and training courses, so we kind of consult with the community within the topics that we can cover, because we cannot cover everything. So there's a little bit of communication with the community members, gathering that feedback, and then we organize the training. and having kind of the right skills for it. So yeah, it's really varied and it's really nice. I really like it.
It's actually quite yeah. I can feel that because I also do similar. So I would say maybe it's also interesting for our audience to know that. I mean, I don't get enough opportunities to discuss this because we discuss mostly sometimes, most of our talks or interviews like this are with scientists. So I'm glad that we are talking about the other aspects of it. So my job is for staff scientist. That means I do have my project, a scientific project, which I conduct. Mostly along with junior scientists together, and I'm planning the projects, and they are doing a lot of different things. I also do a little bit of lab work, but mostly it's as you go more senior, the lab works decreases. So that's also the thing. So that's one thing. I'm also research manager in our chair, so I manage research in terms of acquisition of instruments, also see if we have enough funds, do we have to get more grants, where do we manage the money, discuss with our boss of the chair to do planning labs. So I just sort of established 4 different labs from last year, for example.
Okay.
So, setting that up to look at blueprints of labs, I mean,
you end up having to do all kinds of stuff that we don't have formal training for. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I am also what they call in German Projektleiter, which basically is like scientific project manager, where I have to then go for, all the paperworks with the Bavarian government, all the genetic safety, all the, biosafety, all these paperwork has to be filed. So, for example, we just established formally now a biosafety level 2 lab, which was biosafety level 1. I had to do the conversion, and this whole conversion has so many legal aspects, so many different types of paperwork, so many different considerations, which at the back of what we do in research, we never really consider how much, how much actually goes into it, starting from knowing every single bacteria and its potential risk to filing that, to looking at, sometimes some of the days I'm sitting here and I'm thinking that I'm a lawyer because all I see are those clauses, so this is what it is. And then some of the days I really like doing work in the lab, and some of the days I'm really in the cell culture lab supervising a student. So this is really also nice. So I think this is really important for us to understand, and specifically our audience who are mostly from bachelor's, masters. They should understand what goes
masters and PhD also.
This kind of PhDs as well. So I think this is really great that we are talking about this. What I want to also have your perspective on is that, because many people I know will ask this question: is it really necessary to have a PhD for this kind of a role, or does it help at all?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes and no. So I think it depends. It depends, right? So I think. So actually, I spent some time in an HR team. So I was an HR officer for a while. And that was a really interesting experience. I got training like in HR management and stuff, and then also learning on the job. And it was probably the steepest learning curve I've ever had. And so, for example, for that, having, surprisingly maybe or not, having a PhD really helped, because once you go through the PhD, you get an understanding of how a lab functions, what are like the kind of dynamics that happen inside a lab or inside an institution. So when you change roles and you're saying like in people management or in procurement, having that detailed understanding of what the needs are, like of a scientist or a technician or a lab manager or a group leader, helps you make much kind of better informed decisions.
Yeah.
Right. So I think do you need a PhD? Yes or no? It depends on the level of decision making that you're going to be involved in. I think that would be my answer. So if you're going, for example, if you want to be involved in shaping policy or shaping, say career paths in HR, or then sometimes having a PhD will help you because you'll have a better understanding, and therefore the policies that you will help design would be better. And I'll give you an example. Like when I was working in a team, so I was the only person with a science background. And kind of coming back to that thing of, the more different backgrounds you have in a room, the better things are. So I was the only one with a science background, but all these other people had a background in human resources management or finance or whatever. So we all brought a different perspective, and putting all of that together meant that our thinking process was much more robust, because you had different people going, oh, but we need to remember this and remember that, and we have these needs, and further down the line we might have this problem. So in that sense, having a PhD helped me, and it ended up helping the team because we could work in a way that made sense in the context of a research institute. So for example, I think nowadays you see sometimes that there's a lot of, say at the finance level or human resources level, there's a little bit of misalignment. So decisions are made that then the researchers are like, seriously, this doesn't make any sense. And it's because there's that disconnect in expertise, right? So if people are talking with each other and helping each other, I think there are other types of jobs that you might not really need a PhD. And maybe doing a master's and then retraining might be also a wiser use of time and resources, because retraining also can cost money and all of that. So I think it really depends.
Yeah.
I don't think a PhD is a passport for everything.
Sure.
But I also know that this opinion is a bit controversial, because I think more and more there's this perception that somehow a title gets you further. And in nowadays society, to some extent, that is true. But I've also met a lot of PhD holders that are not honoring their title.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, that I agree 100%.
I think, experience and having good quality training can go a long way. Work experience can go a long way. And sometimes you have people with lots and lots of years of experience that might not have the PhD title, but are extremely competent and excellent professionals. So, I
think this is great. I think good perspective, because I mean, I definitely can tell only like my personal experience, as you are saying from your side, this is your perspective. You think that it definitely, if I understood correctly, you think that it's definitely benefited you in having that, right?
Absolutely. So, in my case, yes.
Yeah. So in my case as well, I think I can give you a couple of examples. As I was saying that when we set up this lab, we are having this Center for Organoid Systems here in another campus of TU in Munich. And we were setting up, we got 2 labs there for organoid work, heavy cell culture work. And as I was looking at the blueprints, I was able to discuss with the architect and the project manager there that, hey, we need this, maybe this doesn't fit there, because I know that because I have several years of experience in cell culture.
And the workflow, you know how things go.
Exactly. So those things. And then I can say what will work, what will not work. And suddenly, also I appreciate that the other party realizes that. And then they came back to me all the time saying, hey, we are looking at acquiring this sort of a big plate reader with imaging function. Do you have experience with such and such, or can you suggest? So, and then, I do have experience with some instruments like that. And I could say that which one functions how, what difficulties you can get in one type or the other. And, so sort of then help them acquiring that instrument as well eventually, which definitely comes with that sort of an experience you have in a PhD, right? It's not only about the title. I think it's about what skills you gained with that.
Exactly. I really actually wanted to add that, because there's something about doing a PhD, and it's definitely not about the title. And, you can do that by being a technician or a lab manager, actually. So when we are in the lab, we are trained and eventually become hardwired to solve problems. And this is something I've noticed. So, and the reverse applies, right? So people I know who come from a biological sciences background and who have plenty of experience with research, we have a very specific mindset, and we have a very specific way of looking at the world and looking at problems. We are most of the time very solution oriented. We can look at a complex problem in like very short period of time, we can break it down into parts and we start like solving it. And that's something that it's very useful in science. But what I've learned is that these skills are extremely useful in pretty much every job. And we are very agile at doing this and, analyzing data. So, for example, I have friends and who they actually need to do a lot of data analysis, but they don't have the necessary background that we have in science to do actual good quality data analysis. And it's interesting to exchange ideas with them. And I sometimes call them out and saying like, you can't be handling your data like this. So in that sense, like having a lot of work experience, not necessarily a PhD, I think the PhD gives you that work experience in a very intense and very short period of time. So I think there's some value to that. But on the other hand, again, kind of the importance of different backgrounds. Like when I, talk with people who come from very different academic or just like backgrounds in general, they look at the world in a very different way. And it's amazing to see how many blind spots as scientists we actually have. So I agree with you. It's like that experience and the skills, it brings value to who we are as professionals. And that makes it also sometimes, although it doesn't seem easy, but it makes us quite good at shifting to other careers, because I think sometimes students think, oh, I know I've been in the lab and now these are, the only thing I can do is experiments. Like, no, actually we acquire a huge amount of transferable skills that we don't acknowledge and might not even realize.
Yeah, and that is actually, this is, since you said transferable skills, I had a question which I wanted to ask, which is, so what kind of transferable skills does someone like you need? I mean, what would be if, let's say, one of our audience members is trying to pick up
You mean like in my
like
current
this?
position as a program officer?
Let's say your direction of
So the most useful ones for me, I think really strong interpersonal communication is super important. I think negotiation skills are really important. So, like being able to listen to people, being able to like, not argue in a conflict, but like argue your case, listen to people, and kind of, I think that kind of communication skills are super important. I would say definitely project management skills. So being able to like multitask, like, keep different projects running at the same time, making sure, we have both an overview of everything that's happening, but also kind of, being able to control what's happening at the detailed level. I think all kinds of analytical skills end up being transferable, right? So the data I handled in the lab is different from the data I handle today, but I can still apply my analytical skills to data, right? So I think that's important. Something I find that is really helpful and transferable is like kind of being tech savvy is important, especially nowadays. Like no matter what job we do, we're going to be using technology in one way or another. So and in the lab, we learn to, I think this is, for example, something that is transferable, but we don't realize. In the lab, we're always learning new techniques. We pick up a protocol, we test it, you learn how to do it, you optimize it. I don't know what name I would put to that, but that kind of skill, it's really useful, because when you start a new job, you're going to be thrown at, new procedures. You need to follow protocols, although different kinds. So you need to learn them. You need to sometimes optimize them. And of course, maybe it's no longer a Western blot or a PCR, but the skill to be able to read information, process it, analyze it, and do something with it, analytical skills, it's super useful in all jobs. So I use that every day, all the time. I think, and I mean, specifically for the job, I think diplomatic skills are really important, because I work, and even in science, and I think sometimes people forget that we work with people from all over the world. I think it's important we all have our cultures, right? And we all have our frameworks of what is considered, right or wrong, or polite or impolite or whatever. But if we are all able to kind of step into a diplomatic common ground, it's so much easier to work together. and to really be able to listen to other people and understand where they are coming from, and then also, kind of express where we are coming from. So I think that diplomacy is definitely an important skill. I mean, regardless of what we're doing, really specifically job.
No, I think that's important. I also learned that, I mean, having to do what I do now, I learned how communication and interpersonal skills matter, right? I mean, you have to communicate with so many different types of people, and how they perceive you all depends on how you communicate. And people, if you go a little, one step further and make that effort, it really pays off at the end, that people want to work with you, people want to collaborate with you, and really want to help you, and you can extract a lot of efficient work out of it,
Yeah.
So I think
this
is very important.
Dr. Das
Actually,
always
now tell me.
Same. Dr. Das always told me about don't focus in your English, don't focus other thing. Always focus first priority your communication, and you should be a diplomatic person always.
So oftentimes people say Manoj is always like, hey, my English is not that good. I said, it matters how your approach is. It matters how you make the other person feel at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
It's helped me
I mean,
a lot in
imagine
my
if you
career. That's why I am facing you, and I'm doing that kind of things.
Yeah, and I think you can have the most perfect English, but if you're going to deliver an extremely unpleasant message in perfect English, you're still going to be unpleasant, So
So I actually wrote down something I just saw. There's another, I want to tell the audience, there's another very coincidental link between Leo and me, and it's been, I'm very fascinated right now. There are so many links coming up. Is that you were in IGC in Gulbenkian right before this? So when I was in postdoc, we had a active collaboration with Gulbenkian, and for our audience, Gulbenkian Institute, now it's renamed as GIMM, Gulbenkian Institute of Molecular Medicine, I think.
That's correct.
And it is one of I think it's a really good institute. I think anybody who's listening to and wants to pursue science, it actually is one of the best places to do. They have really good collaborative network, and they were collaborating with us as well in the microbiome sector in UNIL. And I know also groups there, Walden Kong's group, Karina Javier's group, and all these people. And one of my, just like Manoj, one of my like mentees, someone I mentored, actually started her PhD there under Karina Javier's group also. So
the world is so small.
So she was actually in one of the sessions yesterday. We were having a sort of a career session with another university in India, and she was one of the panel members with us as well.
How nice.
Okay, so that's another connection. So I think the world.
So that's where I was working before I came to EMBO. So I was there for 3 years or something. 3 years. So
very nice place. Lisbon itself is a great place. I was there once for a conference. Really, really nice. So what I want to also focus, since you work in global activities, I want to bring in sort of the perspective from, let's say, back home in India, where people want to know a few things. So what do you think are the major hurdles coming from students coming from India, for example, or how could they actually best utilize funding's general scientific environment in Europe, for example?
In Europe, in general? Good question. I mean, okay, so maybe I'll start. So EMBO has a cooperation agreement with India.
Okay.
So maybe this is actually useful information for people who might not know. So one of the things that PhD students, postdocs, actually group leaders also, and master students who have had like at least 1 year of research experience, if I'm not mistaken, they can apply for what's called EMBO scientific exchange grants. So they will give them the opportunity to come to Europe, any of the what we call EMBC member states, and do stay here between 1 week and 3 months to establish a new collaboration and learn new techniques. And then they would go back to their lab in India and kind of bring that technology and knowledge back and set it up there. So that's like one opportunity, and EMBO provides the funding to cover the travel and the stay in Europe. So that's pretty cool. Another opportunity we offer for researchers based in India are postdoctoral fellowships. So that's for junior postdocs, is for anyone who has finished their PhD within like 2 years of applying to the postdoctoral fellowships. And then in general, honestly, I'm not sure I'm like the best person to answer that question because I don't have like a super European perspective on things. And I'm also very critical about the way Europe relates with non-European people. But I would say, that one of the maybe sometimes like best approaches is to contact people. So when I was finishing my PhD, my supervisor told me, look, whenever you look for a job, let your network know. And contact people to find out how their job is, like find out more about what you're looking for, whether it's a lab or an institute or whatever. And what I discovered is that many times, not always, but many times, like the people I contacted to ask for more information, just for the sake of informing myself, people were quite happy to answer. And I got loads of good advice, whether it was in terms of the lab environment or the institute or the city, or how to move countries, or things I should consider. But I'm not sure what kind of like advice I could give in terms of people making the most out of the European.
Yeah, I think you did great in the advices. I mean, as I said, the exchange program is something which you really, I think students will benefit from them. I'm sure a lot of students are hearing this for the first time as well. I think EMBO's postdoctoral program is quite famous already, and people, I would say, generally know about it. But I think this exchange program is certainly a very,
I can send you the link for the scientific exchange.
Yeah, that would be great.
And then, of course, so if people want to attend let me just find the link. So we have all the EMBO conferences and practical courses, and we also fund that in, based in India. Actually, every year we fund at least 6 or 7 events in India. So, for example, because we have the cooperation agreement with the government of India, if people want to attend, say, a conference in Chile or in Singapore or in France, they can apply through the organizers of that conference. They can apply for travel grants and fee waivers. Because organizers of EMBO courses and workshops get a specific pot of money to award travel grants and fee waivers for researchers, whether they're students or postdocs or PIs, based in India. So that can be, I can send also the link for the conferences. That's also like a really nice benefit, actually.
I think that's already crucial information. I think we can talk about a bit about the perspective you were already mentioning. So what do you think then students and let's say researchers in Europe facing in general in terms of where they're coming from outside? And what is your perspective, what you were saying that, what does Europe do right and what does Europe do wrong? Or let's say it's not about only coming to Europe, but also, let's say, international research in general, right?
Okay, so I think first a disclaimer. This is my personal opinion. I'm not representing I'm not representing EMBO or any institution. So I speak as someone who I grew outside, I grew up in Angola, and I definitely, I think, people look at me and they think I'm European. I don't identify as European at all, culturally. So what does Europe do right and what does it do wrong? So I think one of the main challenges, and look, this doesn't apply only to Europe, right? If you go somewhere and you look different, people are going to look at you. And this is kind of like a human reaction, right? It is how people act on that feeling of like, ooh, this is different, that I think makes a difference. I think integrating as an outsider is not easy anywhere in the world, right? I've lived in the US, I've lived in the UK and in the Netherlands and in Portugal and now in Germany. Integrating is just not easy.
Yeah.
Integrating is easier when the culture where we come from matches more closely the culture that we are in now, right? Mm-hmm. So if that difference is very big, the integration process is just going to be slower and harder. And that's regardless of where you are or where you come from. I think what Europe is missing is is education on their own history and what that meant to the rest of the world.
Okay.
So there's a very, very deep ignorance about Europe's colonial past and Europe's neo-colonial present, because that attitude hasn't gone away. And we can see it in the way governments relate with each other, in the way governments negotiate things with each other. You see it in cooperation agreements. You see it in the way people talk about countries outside of Europe. So when I moved to Europe, like kind of listening and perceiving all of these was really shocking. Then it also started making sense. You know, kind of if you start looking at the broader picture and how the world functions, I was like, oh, this is where it's coming from. So I would say that having like a proper understanding of its own history as a continent and as a culture, if we kind of group it all together within the, of course, huge diversity that exists within Europe, that would be really helpful, right? And it would help, I think, this continent to maybe open up to the world in a different way. I think what Europe does right, and I mean, I'm not from here, and I have a lot of questions in terms of my own, like culturally there are lots of differences, but I think it's a continent where social rights are very much protected, and it's something that is quite unique in the world, and it's something that I never take for granted, right? I mean, I also find it interesting how much, culturally speaking, there's a level of complaining that goes around in Europe, and I was like, wow, I mean, you know,
this I know.
but things are, I mean, of course, like everywhere has problems.
Yeah.
But compared to other realities in the world, which is like a large percentage, things are pretty good here. I mean, and of course, and more now, politically, things are very complicated for sure. But I think, you know, social rights and an effort towards, you know, we're not there yet, but an effort towards equality. I think these are values that Europe has been building since the Second World War that are very important and that are very rare and valuable. So I think in that sense, you know, coming to Europe and seeing how society has been built in that sense is, like it's a very positive thing, and it fits a lot of people. And having public healthcare systems and having public educational systems, this is wonderful, right? I think in terms of, I think there's also, again, this varies, but this focus on, you know, funding education and funding science and funding innovation, you know, and more trying to do that also cooperatively with different regions of the world. I think it's a hard question to answer because it's very complex. I think it's all of these interactions are informed by a very long past that is still to be properly documented as well. And so
you're right. I mean, I think there's always people who, I'm also shocked by sometimes people who, there are people who do not know anything, and there are sometimes I see people who have profound ideas of like what other cultures do, and you know, and in Germany specifically, I've seen that. Of course, it's still biased towards certain countries, and I was sometimes shocked how much Germans know about Indian culture and politics and things like that.
All right.
And also coming from India, I definitely agree with you. When I first came and I saw as just a PhD student, I mean, I just say it like that because maybe it's the other perspective talking, how much social protection, social rights we still have, right? I think this gave me the peace of mind to focus on something more important,
Of course.
studies and all these things. I think, and generally, generally a very well balanced, quality of life in terms of expenses or in terms of any other thing is really, I think, attractive for a lot of people to
absolutely
utilize. Also, when you talk about global activities from your side, how much? So, what is the current scenario if you have to summarize in terms of funding? Let's say if you're associated with funding and EMBO activities. So, what are the? I don't know. What are the? Maybe we should convert it into like a myth versus fact. Like, what are the myths you have busted in your your term there? Like, is there anything which is people think, oh, this is not the case, and you said no. I mean, this is actually not true. Something like that, something interesting we might want to, since you work with so many countries and I only have very limited perspective of only few countries.
I don't know. So, but you mean in terms of like people's perception of EMBO and of or
funding in general, and where are different fundings taking place? Maybe there is a country we don't know doing really well in funding, or something like that. It's very sort of a very common perspective or common knowledge kind of thing, which I don't have yet. On these things.
I don't think there have been like any myths busted. I mean, so for example, sometimes, kind of going back to what you were commenting earlier, sometimes, people will say certain things about certain countries that are just not true, and that just because of their very limited perception that's always been biased by media and stuff. So I think there are moments when there are myths busted in the sense of like, oh, I don't know, I had this perception about this country, but actually it's not the case. But that has a lot to do with levels of competency and quality, right? So this, but I think, so it's not really a myth, but for example, I think there are some countries in Europe that are pretty well established in sense like they have their own national funding, so they might not be like as interested in applying for funds, like for EMBO programs, right? Because they have their national programs, and maybe the country is a member state, but they don't necessarily engage as much because they're happy with their kind of local ecosystem. And I've had situations like, oh, that's really interesting, because I thought, they were kind of more internationally facing and actually not so much. But I don't know. I don't think there have been like, since I've been here, many kind of myth busting that I could share.
Yeah, I mean, I think funding landscape is very interesting. I think Europe's, like, for example, I saw myself like a very big shift after Brexit in terms of your European funding.
Okay, if we're gonna talk at that level,
So this is that.
Okay, so I mean, but there's not really like a myth, or it's mostly, I think, and all of us can see that. Of course, after Brexit, there was this massive like reshuffle. I mean, also now with the Trump regime, and NIH pulling out funds, that's been an interesting, very unsettling, but also interesting kind of dynamic that it unleashed, because the world was extremely dependent on American funds, on US funds, which I guess maybe for a long time, a lot of countries took it for granted because, well, the money is just coming in, and, we were not putting as much money on the European side as we could have. And now the funding is now gone. We see the huge hole it left, and it's crazy. And at the same time, it also shows the level of dependency, right? Maybe no one was really stopping to think about. I think something that has been really surprising and frustrating, if you ask me, is how much, I guess, the geopolitical context, of course, is not helping. But after a pandemic, how much governments are divesting from science.
Oh, wow.
I find that super counterintuitive, right? How come we've gone through like 2-3 years of a pandemic that has shown to the world that we do need research, and we need, like strong and well-funded teams of researchers, and the national budgets for science are shrinking.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
That's very interesting to know. Yeah.
and I mean, and this is in the news, right? If you start looking at the annual
Mm.
budgets that have been approved, there's a lot of money that is being removed from science, and you have a lot of money going into defense.
Okay.
Priorities, I mean, it's
It's different. It's actually a very interesting perspective. And since you already mentioned that, I want to know now from your perspective, I think this is an insider perspective, right? People would be really interested to know is that what changes are you seeing now after the NIH funding cut? What is Europe doing about this? And what do you see? What is your forecast in the next 5 years or so?
I think so. The main reaction that we are seeing is you have a lot of institutes and a lot of, even at the country level or at the ERC level, stepping up and saying, let's try and become as attractive as we can in terms of getting researchers from the US and getting funding and continuing to support projects. So there has been a very strong reaction, because I mean, we have to, unless we want to also lose a lot of jobs in research, but there you see this movement of like, let's make this happen, and let's kind of make Europe a hub sort of thing, or continue growing in that direction. And that kind of also shows the cooperative, how important it is to be cooperative, right? If there's a problem, let's kind of get our heads together and find a solution, and try and kind of come out through the other side in a better shape. And as terrifying as it might be, like I wonder if this is really going to work to strengthen European research. It's being a huge strain, right? You have lots of people who had their kind of salaries and research projects fully funded by the NIH, that when they from one day to another said, well, there's no money. I mean, the level of stress that is causing at the institutional level and at the individual level, I mean, people have families, so like it's being quite intense and problematic. But I mean, maybe in the next 5 years, actually, Europe is gonna, shift the way it's organizing itself and the way the funding is being awarded, and we're gonna see, and even maybe, I think you were starting to also see that, is you start having a lot more bilateral agreements with countries in Asia and in Africa. You see a huge cooperation, or it's growing more and more, like the cooperation between the European Union and the African Union, and it also India and Japan. So maybe like we're just shifting ties and shifting connections, and it's for sure going to look very different, but at the moment it's very stressful.
But I think the students would want to know, do you think, even if the NIH out of like doing this, do you think, if simply put, is Europe safely funded now for them to come and work here?
Right now, I wouldn't say necessarily so, because like we're still trying to find our feet, right? And by we, I say kind of Europe, EMBO specifically not, because we don't have ties with the US whatsoever. I think there's another thing that it's important to mention, that although at the kind of scientific research level, there's this effort to overcome this challenge, at the political level, Europe is shifting back to the right politically. And what this means is that immigration policy is also shifting to the right. So it's making traveling to Europe, even just as a tourist, extremely complicated. So I think, I don't know, I'm not sure the next few years, like, it's an interesting one, right? Because maybe at the level of the research ecosystem, Europe wants to become as attractive as possible, and kind of, maybe try and soak up whatever is leaking from the US, because there are lots of people leaving the US. But at the same time, if they don't make immigration laws easier for everyone, because there's, I think most countries, it also depends in some in some countries this is changing, but sometimes if you are coming as a researcher, then your immigration process will be easier. But in some countries, they don't make that distinction.
Okay.
Or if you want to come and study here, and I mean, it's very common that students, they apply to come to a university in Europe and they get accepted. And by the time they actually manage to arrive, they've lost a semester.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So not only they have to change countries, change cultures, etc., but they lose 6 months of lectures, which means the immigration system actually creates a setback in the whole learning process.
Sure.
Which, if you layer that on top of a society that has a lot of prejudice, you know, people are going to look at these students as not being good enough. But actually, well, if the system is not helping me be the best that I can, how, you know? So it's not an easy answer.
Well, at least it's an answer from someone who's directly seeing this. I think this is important, you know, to be involved. Someone as you who is involved in funding and activities globally, to have that perspective, because oftentimes we hear in the news, we hear from other peers, but I think for me at least, it's a much better source of understanding the crux of it, or actually what is happening. I think that our audience will appreciate that as well.
I think you have, so just to add to that, like, I mean, for example, for us, our program members, we will always provide visa letters to say that these people are funded by us, and so they can get their conference visas, etc. It doesn't always work. You would be surprised. What happens sometimes, like I was saying, in some countries is shifting. There are some institutions like universities that they try to work directly with the consulates and the embassies to make the immigration process easier, right? So if you're coming for research or studying, the process will be expedited. But again, I mean, I think it's really valuable when a whole institution commits itself to liaising with the government to say, look, you know, let's make this exchange of researchers much easier, because everyone benefits, right? But it's not happening everywhere, and it's the kind of thing that is political, so it takes time.
Yes. Oh, definitely. I think we could actually talk for a longer time than this, but I think everybody have our own commitments. Leo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will definitely keep in touch, and then let's find another opportunity to discuss more then.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys visit Heidelberg, let me know.
Absolutely, I'll let you know. Okay.
Thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you. And see you in the future.
Have a good day.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.